panel. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hey everyone.
Really, really excited to open the day as well as our remote design week with all of you. So thank you so much for that. Um, I definitely did not do, a good enough introduction on purpose to each one of you. So it would be amazing for us to, for all the attendees to hear a little bit about you, your journey, so we can kick off with some short introductions. Who wants to go first?
I'll jump in. So, hey, I'm Andy. I'm the Executive Vice President of Design at Rocket Companies. It's the #1 lender in the United States. So I've got a team that's really focused on transforming the mortgage lending experience for millions of people, whether they want to buy or refinance a home, as well as professional partners across the lending and real estate spectrum. I'm also passionate about design education, giving back to the community. I love events like this, so thanks for letting me be part of it. And I've co-host a podcast with Lisa Welchman called Surfacing.
Amazing. Welcome, Andy.
Thanks.
I'll go.
Jyoti?
Yes. Yeah. Great to be here today. I'm in a little bit cloudy Seattle. Really excited to be with the other panelists. I've been part of the design community for quite a bit of time. Have worked in Starbucks, Microsoft, recently just at Nordstrom, and then came over to SiriusXM Pandora in the last year during the pandemic. So I know a lot of folks are curious about, how do we navigate during the pandemic and how does that all work? So currently I am really leading the design and the product management team there on the streaming apps. So coming from retail, which is a very different business model, and then going into a streaming experience has been a lot of great learning for me. And like a lot of the other panelists, I've learned a lot about how to connect virtually, how to spend time together, how to create community. And this is why I'm so excited to be asked to join this panel, because part of what Andy said, just being connected to the community and giving back is a big ethos in my life. So really excited to be here.
Thank you so much and welcome.
Thanks, Preet.
Thomas,
I can
Anna?
jump in.
Yes.
I can jump in. Hey everyone. Oh, I should say ahoy everyone. Thomas from AhoyConnect here. I'm dialing from Prague, but I'm a designer by trade. Spent the last decade designing products for teams that were mostly remote, and with my passion for design tools, spent 2 years building an R&D department at Envision, responsible for products like freehand or craft plugins, which some of you still might remember, calling all the Sketch OG fans here. But kind of the journey went from building tools for a design community, going to building a platform for community-led companies. So now kind of switched the gears and coming in as a design founder and CEO at AhoyConnect, which is a community data intelligence platform, helping community teams really utilize and utilize the power of community growth. So, I'll be happy to tell you more about AhoyConnect in the dedicated channel in Slack, and really excited to be part of this panel. So there's a lot of struggles that were happening around pandemic and building products. So
yeah, can totally imagine. Thank you, Thomas, and welcome, and also big shout out for being our biggest supporter at the conference. So thank you. Last but not the least, Anna joining us from Portugal.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm Anna. I'm in Porto. Kind of sunny today. Yesterday it was raining a lot. I'm work at Doist for about 8.5 years now. I was one of the first designers to join, and now we are 11 designers. Fully remote team. We are about 95 employees all over the world. So I can give you some tips about how to grow a design team from one person or two to 11. And yeah, I'm looking forward to speak about with all of you. Doist is the company behind Todoist, the software, the productivity software application, and most recently Twist, which is a communication tool that focuses mostly on asynchronous communication. and we just launched version 2 less than 1 week ago. So
Oh wow, that's amazing. Glad you could still join us, and it's kind of post launch. So thank you so much. Big welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for sharing an introduction. Also, I forgot to mention earlier. So I do have our I am watching, keeping an eye on our chat stream as well. So this will be quite an organic discussion. So for everyone watching, please feel free to add your questions in the chat, and I'll try and bring them in front of the panelists as we go through the different themes of navigating through the pandemic. I already see that Andy does have a little bit of a upper advantage here because he's getting quite some love for his background and the sneaker closet. So already there's some love being shared on the chat. Cool. So talking about navigating through the pandemic, not everyone, when the pandemic right hit in, we are almost like 2 years in now, or yeah, almost 2 years in with us, with design community, DesignX community. I remember my experience. We were, I think, 6 weeks in. I just had a newborn at home, our first kid, and then the pandemic hit, and we were almost about to pay for a venue for in-person conference in Amsterdam that we had to immediately cancel. Circle back, switch gears, think about putting together a virtual conference, and that's how Remote Design Week came to be. Now, everyone, depending on their personal situations, professional environments, the business that they were in, had to navigate the onset of the pandemic quite differently. So I think it'll be amazing to hear from all of you, what that first month was like, because we were hearing a lot of different opinions. There were some opinions that, oh, it's a great time to, just pause, take a break, but not all of us could afford to do that. So just to get a little bit of context from the learnings that you will be sharing through the panel, would be amazing to understand, like, where were you in, let's say, last February, March? Like, what kind of headspace were you in personally and professionally?
I can maybe start a little here, because last 2 years were a crazy roller coaster, in a good and a bad way, and I hope we can dive into more challenges around like scaling remote teams, and I'd love to hear from Anna, how that changed with you guys. But right before the pandemic, 2 years ago, we were just starting the business. Trying to have a physical Ahoy team, automating processes for any remote company that was living and breathing in Slack. We're kind of tying it more to community, and Preet, it the best, where that community went through a very radical change when the pandemic hit, and really switching completely virtual. It was even more critical to put more effort and time to really keep the community engaged and have you more visibility to what community's health is. And with our previous business, we're trying to help a little bit with that. And by the end of last year, we're automating processes for community managers, and very quickly realized, okay, there's some bigger problems, and the Preets of the world, where suddenly you start managing 7,000 or 20,000 community members online, doing online conferences, and then trying to figure out their requests and tasks and whatever. That can get over your head, and then probably going to do 100 different things, and maybe your husband or your wife is not going to be that happy about it. So that kind of led us to changing the business completely and finding opportunity to help community managers to really build a full platform for them. But telling the team that, hey, we're pivoting in the middle of pandemic, and we need to start raising money, and we need to scale the team, and we don't know what's the future going to be for communities. Not really something you want to hear from your CEO. So if you ask me where I was a year ago, I probably stressed the hell out of it. But I think that's why I'm here, to put the perspective on things. It doesn't need to go that easy. And you can still do rock and roll and enjoy it. But things are changing every month now. So none of us know probably what's happening here, and we all adopted in a different way. And for us, that means we completely pivoted. We're able to even raise money, and I can tell about the stress about that a little later. But things are good now.
That's really cool. And Thomas, how big was the team at that time when you announced the pivot?
small. It was 4 people.
Wow.
Now, I mean, we hired 10 people in last month.
Yeah.
Probably another 15 in probably 2-3 months. Shamelessly plugging in, we're looking for stellar designers.
That's totally welcome. Amazing, amazing. So it seems like the pivot was yeah, happened for the best.
Yes,
Um,
happened for the best,
yeah,
but probably for everyone, even in the other companies where it all
right,
ties in then to the culture and to every single team member. We all need to
right,
get it all in. Like it's not about a one-man show anymore. And we
right,
all had our
right.
personal issues and balancing your own lives with going remote and then changing business.
Totally.
It's definitely fun.
Yeah, yeah. I can totally imagine, and of course, as you mentioned, I definitely saw, because I was a user of the previous products. I definitely saw that the changes from the user perspective too. Jyoti, on your end, like you were kind of on the almost at the other end of the spectrum at a massive organization, a retail giant, Nordstorm. Would be amazing to hear. How are you navigating what was happening last February, March?
Yeah, I think, a lot of what Tomas said resonates as well. I was in a scenario where I was just coming back from a trip visiting my husband's family with my two sons. Suddenly, we got a call that they needed to be picked up for a period of 2 weeks, because this pandemic had started. 2 weeks turned into obviously 18 months to where we are today. And then we ended up being asked to go work remotely. And Nordstrom is, 100 and I'd say 18, 19-year-old company. And the digital business has been growing quite dramatically throughout the last, 10 years or so, and certainly in the last 5 years. And so as far as where we ended up having to pivot, everything turned to digital because the stores were closed and nobody was going into the physical locations. And we had to quickly take every ounce of our energy and completely make it super customer centric to what people are going through in that moment. So things like, being able to pick up in store, being able to do returns really easily, being able to have that connection was valuable and important. And the digital side of it had to be incredibly fast, efficient, and connected to the customer. So those are the things we were focused on, and making sure that the design team had like clear priorities of where we needed to head, because at the time it felt like for the whole world, I think, very reactive.
Hmm.
And we needed to figure out like the right kind of game plan. And some of the things that Tomas, you mentioned too, about how do you get the team to sort of drive forward in this difficult time. It takes sort of the pivots and those moments to actually do transformational work. And so we got a chance to drive in a lot of ways during that time and move the roadmap around and adjust and scale. A lot of it, though, I'd love to hear other panelists talk about it. It was pretty jarring for everybody, at least at Nordstrom, to be suddenly moved into a home remote only environment. And so bringing in new talent, doing all that, we had to really create that energy and environment. And we definitely had opportunities to make that better. And then, a few months later, I switched over to SiriusXM Pandora to try a new experience. And I could talk about more about that later. But I think the very beginning, Preet, was this: how do you get into a playbook or a proactive zone? And then how do you actually help your team prioritize and do the right work to try to drive the business forward in such an incredible time? And the stores themselves remained closed for quite long period of time,
Hmm.
and so it continued to be a big part. So the pressure was on, and design was the key to sort of unlocking customers'
Hmm.
needs. So it was both very exciting, very intense. I think Tomas mentioned stressful, all those things above. At the same time, our kids were like randomly trying to do Zoom calls and didn't know how to do that, and it was crazy. So I can say, as a mother, as a daughter, as a sister, we were all going through emotional change, and I think we continue to
Hmm.
do that. So.
Very true. Very true. Yeah, my wife was on mat leave at that time, because we were 1 month, like our daughter was 1 month old, and even with her being on a mat leave, everything felt so stressful. Like there was just so much work. So I really can't imagine with two kids at home, managing the family, and then almost like such transformational work happening at such a large company, and you spearheading that. So that definitely seems like quite an experience. So thank you so much for sharing that. Andy, on your end, you were not at Rocket Mortgage at that point in time, right? Or
Right.
were you already at the company?
Yeah. So I remember March 2020. I was working at a bank that had just gone through a merger to become the sixth largest bank in the US. So typical merger things as you bring two companies together and try to figure out what the solutions will be. And then the pandemic started to hit, and I was part of a pilot of like trying working from home for a
Mm,
week to see if there would be any issues. That week, I never went back after that. So watching how this bank is trying to like drive these two companies together and move forward, and the pandemic
mm,
hits, and we've got to really focus on all of the different parts of our bank. So our small business banking, our consumer banking, how do people get to banks? How do we
mm,
take this whole bank and move these opportunities online? Of course there's online banking, but how do you schedule appointments? What does that call center look like? What do you do with all of these different things that are changing around mortgage and loans and paycheck
mm,
protection programs and all these different government things while the whole country is essentially shutting down? So,
mm,
design was able to be front and center in a lot of the ideation of how we take these these traditional services and move them online. And through that research and seeing that team's work happening, I became aware of Rocket Mortgage, right, front and center
mm,
of all the
mm,
things as we were focusing on mortgage. So I changed jobs like Jyoti did in the middle of the pandemic and ended up at Rocket Mortgage, which had their best year in 2020, right? So
oh wow.
seeing how interest rates were down and people were looking into buying houses, and it was already online and digital, but of course, this is also a company that was used to being in specific locations, not working remotely. So, taking this team, being new, growing and scaling the team all during a pandemic in an organization that's also getting used to that, working more remotely than ever before, working flexibly like they've never done before. And a lot of those policies, carry over today. We're in here in the US, we're not out of the woods yet, but we're getting there, right? So it's just been fascinating to see how it went from like an experiment of it's only going to last a week to here we are almost 2 years later, and it's the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Someone in our chat put the a week in quotes when you say tried going remote for a week. Wow. Yeah. That definitely sounds a lot of change to deal with, and I think I shared with you, but not. I don't think many attendees would know. So, I also used to be. I used to work for the Rocket companies, group of companies at Rocket Homes, at one point in time, and I noticed how. So we were working out of the Toronto office, but Detroit, where most of the kind of the family of companies were based, there was always like this kind of the epicenter of all the action, everything exciting that was going on was always in Detroit. So I was imagining that there might have been a massive culture shift to deal with, as well as you everyone had to go remote. But it's exciting to hear that you said the company had their best ever year last year.
Yeah, and just to add, we've got such a strong presence in Detroit that
Mm.
and all the things we've done for the city, like our technology team handled a lot of the COVID testing infrastructure, and how we
Oh.
can start to understand like how to bring life back to the city as soon as this like slight touch of normalcy comes back. And we've been doing that, right? The organization, the Gilbert Family Foundation, lots of parts of
Mm.
the company really does give a lot back to the city of Detroit and all of the other areas that we're in. And the team is, back a few days a week, and it's trying to get as much normalcy as possible, which is great to see.
That's amazing to hear. That's it's amazing, but also not surprising. Again, having seen how much the company contributes to the development of Detroit, that's fascinating and really really neat. Um, I was going to ask Anna in the end, because I'm assuming Anna's listening to all of you, and Anna's feeling like, oh, we've been remote since long back, so these challenges are already things that are kind of been there, done that. Anna, was that the headspace you were in last February? Like, not much changed, or were there some massive surprises on your end as well?
nothing changed, but in reality, a lot of things changed because we human beings weren't the same thing that we used to be. We were feeling stuck at home. We had kids at home. We had families. We couldn't go to co working spaces. So everything changed, even though we thought that we had all the workflows, all the things to go remote completely. But then when the world changes, of course, the normalcy of our work also needs to change. So basically, we usually work in 4-week cycles. The first thing that we did was to increase the length of the cycles, not demanding any more work from people, but giving them 6 weeks to get used to having a different life, basically. In the end, we actually had very productive first months. In the beginning, we were very productive because uh, normal was the work was the normal thing for most of us.
Mm.
So while we couldn't go out to see friends, we couldn't do lots of things, the work was that normal thing. Okay, I already know that I can sit here in my computer. Most of us have home offices and everything, so everything was settled. We could just go back to work when everything else was falling apart, basically. So I think that was a good part of the being used to working remotely, basically. But that was for the first couple of months. Then we continue for 1 year more. And now everyone is getting used to it. Everyone has up and downs because we are also all across the world. So when some countries are better, some are worse. For example, in Taiwan, one of the illustrators in the design team is from Taiwan, and they had COVID more or less under control because they closed the entire island for so they had no new case for 200 and something days. And when everything started when they had new cases in, I don't know, June this year or something like that, it was like, feels terrible. I don't know how I can leave. I feel stuck at home. And everyone else was, yeah, that was our life for the last 18 months or 15 months. So, yeah, that's a good thing. But one of the things that we really value in the company is that even though we are fully remote, we try to have in-person events. So every time that someone joins the company, they have an onboarding trip to meet their mentor, because in the first months in the company, they have a mentor. And for example, we canceled trips in March 14, if I'm not mistaken, last year. And we had 2 new designers that would land in Portugal in the 16 or the 17. And we just, because, it was their onboarding trip. They had joined in January. In April, we were going to Singapore for a full company retreat. Everything was booked, paid, and of course it didn't happen. So now it's been 18 months, actually more, because the last company retreat was in 2017, in 2019 in April. So that was the last time we were able to see each other in person, basically. And that's a really important thing for us because it makes us comfortable talking with one another and asking for things in the remote setting more easily. But that's not doable right now.
Wow. Yeah, I think as we're talking about the pandemic, coughing on the live stream, I think is quite on topic and brand. um, I think onboarding trip sounds really neat. Someone in our chat also was mentioning that it's just a Zoom call invite to get on board. It definitely sounds really exciting to have an onboarding trip. But I think I also like the continuous thread in your comment, which was talking a lot about the human aspect. And also when you talk about human aspect, it's not just a consistent layer, but the differences in experiences as well of different team members, like you shared with the team member from Taiwan as compared to the other folks. So we had a question also from the audience around just generally maintaining employee morale in these kind of scenarios. And I know, we've all read different kind of like Medium articles on how to do all these social activities. We've tried to do a lot of them in our Slack groups, in our communities, to keep people engaged. But at the same time, it's also, you're trying to pull them more into virtual activities to do team bonding, whereas I think at the end of the day, folks just want to get off the screen. So what have been some of the key learnings from these last few months or more than a year, that you've seen have worked really well in maintaining, the morale of your immediate team members? And I think we have some, again, really diverse, kind of organization. So, Jyoti, in a large organization, whether it be Nordstorm or Pandora, Sirius XM Pandora. So what are some of those frameworks or experiences that you've seen have worked well?
Yeah, Preet. The first thing is that communication becomes, a lot more important. Not that it isn't already. It's like you have to say something 3 or 4 or 5 or 7 times for someone to really remember it, connect to it. So one thing that I try to do is continue to have, those team meetings and those connects with your directs as often as they need, and keeping myself as available as possible. That's not always easy because we all have large plates of work and lots to do. The other thing that one of my team members, I mean, many of you probably do this, is we get tired of being on the screen. And so we do these walk and talk meetings, which allows us to get outside, to move our bodies, to, just not be looking at a screen for a while. And that's helped people a little bit more casual in nature. The other thing that I do a lot of times before I start a meeting is utilize, I would say, Brene Brown's amazing, tutelage that I've taken in during this pandemic quite a bit. Asking people right now, where are you at? What are 2 words that would describe how you're feeling right now before you begin the meeting? Because when you're in a room with people, you can kind of feel the energy, right? You can say, oh, that person is, feeling good. They look happy, but you can't really feel that in the Zoom call. So a lot of times as a leader, I think it's my job to make sure I try to check in on an emotional level as much as I can to see how people are feeling and thinking. And you learn a lot more by asking a person to choose 2 words to define how they're feeling in that moment. And you can go pretty fast. The last thing, which I would love to hear from other people about this, is some of the social events that I've seen go really well are ones that the team feels excited to do. So I've run into let's do a happy hour, and then everybody doesn't want to necessarily have another hour on Zoom. But sometimes an activity such as, decorating cupcakes, or maybe, some sort of thing where we can build something together. My team used to, I think, continues to do this, different kinds of drawing games together, collaborative play in that way. Where I really try, though, now where we're at with the pandemic, I think folks are looking for more physical ways to meet up. So I do encourage my team to connect with each other, like Anna was saying, when you can, spend time with one another. But I've had some great hits with that, and also some opportunities that didn't work out as well. So those are the things that I'm thinking about with the teams these days. But definitely communication is one of the biggest challenges anyway in an organization of this size. But during this time, not all of us learn by looking at a screen. We learn, by being in a room. So you got to really trust to make yourself available and open to others.
If I can jump in a way, we're coming from a position where, I've been remote before it was cool, and then working for, like companies like Envision, where it's 500-600 people fully remote before pandemic. And I thought, hey, we had all these online activities and happy hours and book clubs and trivia nights. And I thought, with switching pandemic, I mean, nothing should change for us. We used to do remote, but I don't know. It's completely different. This is not remote life that normally, we experienced 4 or 5 years ago. So really those happy hours we want to have, or the trivia nights, doesn't work anymore. you don't want to be on Zoom anymore, or you're sitting in that same room all day long, and your family's next door. Like, you're just looking at a clock where you can start going offline. But to make the Doist team jealous, just 2 days ago we got back from our company retreat in Spain. Finally, after a year, 40 people met together, and we're brainstorming with how to have a better culture, and what to do to kind of help us to feel like we're part of a team outside of what we commonly use as previously as remote organizations. And some things that sounds interesting that, for example, we were planning to do is send a full box of things to do cocktails, and one of the members is a great bartender, so have a session where they'll teach something to someone else, or send books, read it for 2 weeks, and have a little session together for 30 minutes. Or ideally, when we all know that if you have a big organization, that some countries still might not be that good with traveling yet. So try to find those times where few people from specific teams, or for us, like, hey, people in Czech Republic and Slovakia, go on a cottage together, or find time just to meet for that specific team. Because, I mean, speaking just from us, like, culture is everything now. Like, doubling down on this really makes it or breaks it. And if whatever pandemic is going to look like in the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, we're not going back to the normal remote. So we definitely need to come with creative ways to meet each other outside of just a Zoom call.
So true. So true. Love the quote around when you mentioned like culture is everything. And like, I think already, we used to talk a lot about culture, but the pandemic definitely, took the curtains off, and it was evident, in which company, which community, which organization, the culture was authentic, and kind of the bonds were real.
It's also a completely different meaning now, where it's not the values on a website or nothing that we all should follow. But culture changed to those small events or activities you do together that in a normal office vibe, you would look like that's a ridiculous thing to do. Like, why would we want to get drunk and then happy hour on Zoom call? So we adjusting to more simple ways to, bond. But for 2 years ago with Anna, I would say, all the cool remote activities you're doing together, all the office people would be like, this is ridiculous. But now we all need to play the same rules.
Yeah. Very true. Very true. And Nana, any kind of unique, like I love all these like unique activities that at least I'm getting to hear, and our attendees are getting to hear. Love the walk and talk idea that Jyoti shared. Also all the authentic activities that Thomas was talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, similar to Jyoti, in the beginning of meetings, we also do a green, yellow, red check-in. So people say how they are feeling. Green, everything is good. Red, everything is very, very bad. So it's a quick way for us to understand what's the mindset of the person going into the meeting. And another thing that really helped during the last 18 months was to be very transparent. So whenever the world was going worse, we would acknowledge it as a team and as a company, and would invite people to focus mostly on their family and themselves and their health, and not so much on work, because without people, the work won't happen. So yeah, and also give them space to talk in meetings, in one-on-ones. So be transparent. Yeah, the last week was terrible. I don't know. I just feel stuck at home, and they would open up more as well when we are transparent.
Yeah,
Right.
the most important thing has been human connection, right? So it's interesting that people love to connect at different levels. So we tried everything in the beginning. We tried the virtual happy hours with the mixologist. We tried escape rooms, and those work. We've also set up time on the calendars that people could just show up when they want to and just talk. And what we found is, sometimes talking about not work is really the best way to connect in those situations. But when it comes to work, having a steady line of communication is really key. So making sure that we have the regular team meetings, and the one-on-ones, of course, right? So during the pandemic, our team has scaled. We're well into the six figures now, right? So it's very different when you've got that many people that have so many different interests and so many.
Mm,
So it's easier to create opportunities and space for the people that have similar interests to to connect, right? And whether they could do that virtually or in person, which we encourage, is
mm,
something that is more important than gathering, the whole team together at once. There are times when we need to do that, of course, but I
mm,
mean, some of the things that we had an origami like class, and that did really well. I think the team really connected around that. Everybody held up their, some were really good. Mine was terrible. But at the end of the day, it's the opportunity to do
mm,
something different than just be in a meeting talking about work or working. We've also brought in a lot of training and trying to understand people's interests and workshops and
mm,
speakers, just because it lets them see different perspectives and hear things and be able to kind of learn together. I think if you can
mm,
continue to learn together, that connection stays strong,
mm,
and it
mm,
really helps as you go through like the day-to-day work environment, which has its ebbs and flows and its ups and downs depending on what's going on in the world. So it really is just
mm,
important to get to know the team and
mm,
understand each person, kind of what their motivations are, how they're
mm,
feeling, and being able to understand when it's time to give them some space and make sure that you're creating that space for people throughout.
mm,
I
mm,
would love to just say one note to what Andy you just said at the end, where as leaders of teams or organizations, trying to make so many things to make the team bond more and kind of embrace the culture, but I think it's a more important thing to give the team enough space to and support to build the relationships and have the time with the family, because like it's not just like we're not a family in our organization. Like, you have a family at home, and we should help you to actually have a better relationship with them and support them. And specifically with the time where, jobs are changing or your partner doesn't need to, I need to
mm,
switch a job or don't have a job, then you don't care about happy hours here.
mm,
And we should identify, proactively to really, we're here to help. And if you need a
mm.
month or 2 months off because of whatever reasons, like, this should be our job as leaders here. That was my note.
So true, so true. I think so well put around balancing the kind of both parts of your lives or both lives, the professional and personal ones. And I think that's when we were kicking off the panel, like what Jyoti was also leading to or talking about, a really tricky balance. And you're right, like having the leaders and the teams figure it out for the team members can definitely be really impactful and powerful. Now, we talked a lot about these ideas or things that worked to ensure the connections stay strong, because you had the connection with your coworkers or your team, uh, IRL, and then once you went virtual, the focus was on making sure the connections stay strong. What happens when, and it's interesting because we have Jyoti and Andy who actually lived through the experience, and then Thomas and Anna who were scaling their teams and kind of defining the experience. What happens when you bring new team members on board? So we have a few questions from the audience around, like, how the onboarding got, it like had to be evolved, or did it evolve? And so again, in Andy and Jyoti's case, like, I'm sure you also evolved it for your respective teams, but you also got onboarded into new organizations, new teams. So what were some of the learnings or things that you saw have worked really well from that experience? And then Thomas and Anna, from the experience of defining that new onboarding experience.
Yeah, I saw an onboarding program from its nascency all the way through like where it is today in two very different organizations. So,
Mm,
the interesting thing is at the time of the pandemic, like it was hard to get equipment. It was like
mm,
people have to go into the office and grab something and like, oh, we've got this computer we can send out. And then learning, like, how do you send the computer so that it's on the network? What does it look like? What does that remote onboarding look like? For large organizations, they didn't do that. There was like a
mm,
department, a person sometimes, or a few people in a room that would do this for you. So now that all went online. But even being onboarded and starting to onboard, it really shows the opportunity to improve that experience. So, when you onboard a few people, you realize, wait, I really wish that, or they say, I really wish I would have learned that sooner. So we start to develop these programs around like, all right, the company does an onboarding, that's great. Then there's a design team onboarding, or like we're part of a group called product strategy. So it's design, product marketing, product management, and market intelligence all in the same group. So can we take 2 days to introduce people to the whole process, how we work, each individual discipline, what that looks like? And it's just there were, we call them the inches, right? The inches that we need are everywhere around us. So if we can find those opportunities to continue to improve, like the regular design process, like we all do, let's take a look at what we're doing. Let's take a look at how we're onboarding people, and know that every day, every time we do that, it can get better, and take those findings. I feel like for onboarding our team now, it's a process that I'm 80% confident in. I think there's always going to be opportunities to continue to get better, but it's night and day. Like when I onboarded, I got my computer, I set it up, it worked, it was perfect. I was like, this is amazing, and that was it, right? Then the rest were like, jump in and learn these things as you go. And then the next group comes in, it's like, well, here's all these things that you can do, and these people you can talk to, and these steps that you can take, and we can figure out all the other details. That's software, how do we get that set up? And just the organization flexing and learning as it goes has been really interesting to see.
Preet,
So true.
I was going to just jump in, Andy. I love everything you just said. I can, echo almost verbatim the same experience. We definitely should talk after this. Starting a job during a pandemic and starting a leadership role, definitely, I hadn't realized at the time when I took the role that I wouldn't be able to meet a single person on my team that works for me, or that is sort of my leadership team. So the number one thing that I think has helped when I've been onboarded is the connection with, the first 90 days of how you can help that person sort of onboard in. And what I try to encourage is, if we can have a team member who's new, give them somebody like a buddy, or someone that they can work with on a regular basis. One, so they can ask all of the questions that they may not want to ask their manager, so they can develop a sense of community. And where people are literally located kind of together, we try to see if we can get them to meet up. Now, that wasn't the case, as Andy mentioned earlier. In the pandemic, it was really tough to do a lot of those kinds of things. So we had some opportunities, and just to the point of using user-centered design approach on it, I think there's a lot of opportunities to make onboarding more human and more connected. And those are things that we need to continue to look at on an ongoing basis. I also think that one of the reasons that I felt so welcomed into the company is, prior to me starting, and we try and do this, is sending an email to that individual, welcoming them and having sort of a sense of, connection. These are the people on your team. This is who you're going to be working with. We're really excited for you to start. And then really looking at that next couple of weeks and saying, how can we make that really beginning part really shine? And then assigning someone, not necessarily only their manager, because we all need to lean in, but someone that they can connect with. And then about 3 months down the road, what I also try to do with my directs is to try to see if I can get them connected to people outside of our organization. Maybe somebody in the programming team or the music team, and it just kind of gets people to remember we're working for a really cool organization that's quite large, and you can connect in a lot of ways. So those are the networking strategies. But I would say it's not a perfect science.
So true. Yeah. So true. And I love the when we were talking about the almost like like accelerated buy-ins you're getting because of the pandemic, as kind of like some of the positive impacts. And even when Andy was talking about the equipment thing, it reminded me of a conversation last year where one of our community members, who's also in a leadership role, has been working for a public sector company, and they always had desktops. And I don't know for how many years they were pleading, for the organization to get them laptops so they can work remotely. But 1 week into the pandemic, it was like everyone had a laptop. So there were definitely, kind of some accelerated developments that happened, because of the new reality that stepped in. Thomas, Anna,
It's
from your perspective, yeah,
yeah.
scaling teams, you hired 10, 11 people, Thomas, since then.
Yeah, and this is exciting for me to even listen from you guys because I'm for the last, I don't know, 15 years, I never got onboarded in person anywhere. So I'm used to the process where the onboarding starts 3 weeks before you actually start, and you get all the docs signed online. You get videos to watch and listen. You get your equipment in a nice swag box. So I was just like, this is the normal onboarding for me. The other challenge with us coming in, where there's always a department for that in bigger remote organizations that had to figure it out. And there's tons of tools now, and like even working on 15 different countries. But I say, hey, this is, been part of this, I have it figured out. But if you asked me 3 months ago, it was a mess here because I was if you were scaling from 4 people to 14, I was the only one who was trying to do this with 100 different jobs. So I constantly had like 4 MacBooks stacked here and going to DHL saying, hey, I need to send this one to Ireland by tomorrow, and then one to Portugal. Then I forgot that person joined Slack, and in 2 weeks, like I didn't even talk to them. So I thought I had to figure it out, but I'm also part of the problem here, where the processes and documentation and things to make everything visible. And when you're remote in different countries, making actual async. So it's not about the onboarding call on 8 a.m. for everyone. Can play a crucial part of someone not leaving you in 2 months, just not understanding or not feeling like part of the team. And I still have like 2 MacBooks next to me I need to send, so thanks for reminding me.
Wow, so true. Thank you for sharing that candidly. Anna, what about you? You were also mentioning the team scale from you just being the only, like from a small design team to
Yeah,
now
but
quite a
that's
large one.
over 8 years. So yeah,
Oh, wow,
8
okay.
years to learn. But yeah,
Yeah.
the onboarding process, not just in the design team, but across the company, it's been an iterative process. So a couple of weeks after someone joins, we ask them, hey, so what did you miss? So maybe we can add that to the documentation, to the checklist that we have for everyone that joins the company. But yeah, basically we try to make the experience as personal as possible. So everyone that joins as a mentor, which is kind of the buddy, as a buddy mentor for the first 3 months, that person is always available to help them wherever they need. So it's the person they can reach out to if they don't want or are afraid to reach out to the manager or something like that. It's usually someone that works closely with them in the same area from the team. And yeah, usually we have the onboarding trip, which I already mentioned, which was not happening for a long time, but actually the new motion graphic designer that joined the team about 6 weeks ago is now in Chicago for her mentorship trip. So she is able to see another Doister, which it's funny because Stephen, which is her mentor, actually was one of the designers that was supposed to come to Porto and didn't add his onboarding trip yet, but he's already mentoring someone else new in the team.
Right.
But I think that's it. We have a checklist with all the basic stuff to create all the accounts, all the logins. We actually don't need to ship any kind of computers or anything because we give them the money to buy it, which is easier since we work in all continents. It's very hard and expensive to ship computers from even the United States to Europe. The taxes are very huge. So, and yeah, that's it. We've been iterating on it for a long, long time, and
That's really cool. Like lot of I think again that's the beauty of a panel like this, which is you see all this diversity in approach, in process, in operations, in constraints that you have set because of your team size or organization type. So thank you so much for sharing that. I know I've been trying to include some of the questions, but I'm just gonna read out a few comments before we go to our last question to end the panel, because I know some of you have appointments right afterwards. So Hussein mentioned, he loves the fact that these teams have buddies, coaches, and mentors to help them through the onboarding process. So also, and you get a trip at some companies to go meet them, so that's really cool. Livia was sharing her experience their experience where Livia remembers people walking through the streets of London with computer screens on one hand and rolling a chair in the other. So definitely, when your equipment is sitting at the office and you have to drag it all the way out, when the pandemic hit. Maddie, really appreciating, I think, Thomas, when you mentioned the part about maintaining the balance with your personal lives and the professional lives. So definitely asking you to say it louder. And Ayesha was also sharing they had cooking nights, baking nights, virtual escape rooms, and including casual chats with their peers. Um, but I think what Aisha really appreciated was also a plus to be able to have the daughter on the camera or be part of the activity. So again, kind of merging, those the personalized, professionalized, or the having your family also be a part of it kind of makes it a little more real, because your work is now already a part of your family life when working remote. So those are some of the comments that I wanted to just read out and give a shout out to. Before we wrap up, and we only have a few minutes before, especially Jyoti has to head out. We talked a lot about work. Now, in the pandemic, most of us also either took up new hobbies or set some goals, like I'm going to start running every morning because I don't have to commute now. So it would be amazing to hear a little bit about those new habits or hobbies that you picked up in the last 1.5 years and how they're going now. Jyoti, you can go first.
Sounds good. I'm a singer and I play guitar, and it's part of why I was really excited to join SiriusXM Pandora. So I have a music coach who forced me, I would say, but really inspired me to do some Instagram live shows and just get myself out there, because we weren't playing live anywhere. So that was one thing I did. One thing that I would just say around the entire panel that I really appreciate is all of the commentary around self-care and how we as leaders have to take care of ourselves in order to take care of our teams. So some things I've also added in is, more exercise, doing, a mindfulness connection with myself in the morning before I start the day has helped me stay centered. So those are the few things that I've been doing. And Preet, I apologize. I might have to drop a little early, but
Absolutely.
thank you so much for the time.
Thank you so much for joining us. And can we know the IG live handle so we all can
Oh
go
yeah,
and
it's
check out the musical performances?
Jyoti Shukla Music. Pretty easy.
Amazing. We'll definitely check it out. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Andy.
Yeah, so definitely morning walks have become a thing, which have been really fun, just to spend time with my wife, when I'm not working or in between meetings, passing in the hallway. The other thing that I did during the pandemic, Lisa Welchman, who wrote the book Managing Chaos, which is about digital governance, and we started a podcast. And we are 18 episodes in, and it's
Wow.
going strong. We've got episodes recorded through the new year and continue to record, and it's become a fun hobby / passion, just to have conversations with different people who are in the digital space and have the opportunity to impact, like, how humans interact with technology or with design. So it's been a wonderful pandemic hobby for sure.
That's amazing. What's the I think you mentioned the name of the podcast in the beginning. Is it
Yeah, it's
Resurfacing?
called Surfacing Podcast. So just literally surfacingpodcast.com is where you can go to get it, and it's available anywhere that you listen to podcasts.
Amazing. Surfacingpodcast.com. Check it out. Thomas, Anna.
I can go. I stopped going to the gym during the pandemic, as most of you. So yes, one of my decisions was actually to take some time in the morning to have the time for myself to exercise. So either go for a run, do some yoga or Pilates section at home, and that's been amazing. And because I didn't want to do just that, I decided to also do some sort of morning routine. So I take my time to make my coffee and read a book. And so the entire process takes 1 hour, 2 hours, and then I'm ready for the day. But I already took my own personal time before going into the rush stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely so nice when you can do all that, and then you look at the time and it's still like 8 a.m. and you're like, wow, I already had my coffee. Don't have to
Oh no,
commute anywhere.
that's when I wake up.
Oh, you
But
wake up?
yes,
Okay. That's
I'm not a
fair.
morning person, but that's the beauty of remote work.
Yeah,
So I can wake up at 7:30, do all that, and start
right.
working at 10, and that's okay.
That's amazing. Yeah, definitely. If it was not for my 20-month-old, I would have definitely done that too. Thomas.
I don't even think I want to follow here because I'm on the other spectrum. And brutally honest, starting the pandemic with running a lot and have a diet and healthy life. But then pivoted, started raising money and scaling team, and
Yeah.
jumped to the other side of the world where I had zero routines and slowly getting back to it with an amazing team on board. And finally starting to have time to start running more and cooking and taking all the notes from all of you here to implement a few more things. But one great thing's happened during pandemic. I got engaged, so that's my personal accomplishment.
Congratulations.
And it's better than any routine. So
That overpowers all the other things that you're trying to do. So that's amazing. That's really cool. Amazing. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the conversation, because it was, again, as I don't know if the attendees can also tell, at least it felt very candid, very authentic, just bringing these kind of diverse opinions, experiences, and learnings together. So really appreciate all of you taking out the time and sharing it all and helping us kick off the week-long celebration.
Awesome. Thanks, Preet. Enjoy the week, everyone.
Yeah.
Yes. And thank you for
Thank
having
you.
us.
enjoy the week, everyone.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye bye.